I knew George for a couple years before we even started filming, and I just thought he was a really interesting person, but I didn't really know what to do with his story. And I did something I've never done before with any kind of project, and I highly recommend it. I did a test interview, and it wasn't over the phone. It was on camera. We sat down and we had an on camera conversation where I'm
Interesting.
probably not going to use this. I just filmed it myself. I didn't use a camera person. And I went home and listened to the transcripts. And he said something about being in prison and how it's affected his ability to be vulnerable and to get close to women, specifically in a romantic way, but in general, just have close relationships with people, and how he's now, because of everything he's gone through, he's very closed off. And when I heard that, I was, oh, that's a really great way to anchor this film and this character, and not just have it be this, oh, here's this quirky guy who has this mafia background. And
Right.
I wanted something a little bit deeper than that. And then I knew this is a film.
Good day, filmmaker Jennie Butler of the brilliant film Georgie, among other projects. Jennie, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I just got back from Palm Springs Short Fest. It was 105 degrees in Palm Springs. I think it was the hottest I've
Yeah,
ever
not
been
the
in my
time to
life.
go.
Not the time to go to Palm Springs. I think that's why they put the Short Fest in the summer and the real festival is in the winter, because no one wants to come to Palm Springs in June.
But
But
I
no,
was
it was
thinking maybe the philosophy is there's nothing to do outside, so you have to be
you
inside
have
in a
to be
theater.
in the theater just to survive. Yeah.
So Georgie is brilliant. And I've been thinking about it over the past week or so, just how many different things that are in it, and you've loaded it up with a lot of different themes and the shots, and it's really stayed with me. So I'm going to hit you with an initial question. I was just thinking right before we started talking, I assume you watched a lot of the short films. Jennie, do you think that so we would agree that short films, there's been an increase in the number of short films simply because there's easier access to the tools. Do you feel at the Short Fest, you feel like the quality has gotten better, or is it still a challenge for festivals to find really high quality short films?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do also watch a lot of short films, and I've been doing a festival run with Georgie, so I've been watching a lot in the last year. I think, yes, the quality's gotten better in terms of the access to the tools. Like, I saw this festival was I couldn't believe some of the films, they looked like they cost $1 million to make. They were
Right.
insanely high budget. A lot of those stuff came from Europe because they have the money for that there, because their governments support that and ours doesn't, but that's another topic. But yeah, I think that the quality has gone up, but I also think that budget and quality aren't really that connected. You can make a really boring and bad short film that looks great, I think.
Completely.
And on that topic, so Palm Springs got over 6,000 submissions this year. They let 300 films into the festival, and one film won the Best of the Festival award. And that
Right.
one was a 8-minute animated short that the animation, I could have drawn this animation. And
Right.
I'm definitely not an artist. It was very simple. It probably I can't even imagine it costs that much money to make, but it was
Right.
really about the storytelling and the point of view of the filmmaker that shined through that simplicity.
Yeah.
So I guess that all of that is to say that, yes, the films are quote unquote higher quality, but it's really just all about the storytelling.
And filmmakers get so hyped up about that stuff. Like YouTube is filled with just people talking about gear, and you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars going to school. And it's like you said, somebody who just put on their vision and could tell a story won the short fest, even though they didn't put a lot of money into it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And money is great to have, and it's
Right.
definitely, it doesn't
You're not saying
at
that if
all,
somebody
but
listens to this and says, Jennie, I want to write you a check to make,
yeah. Oh, I'll take
that
it.
you're not gonna That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, how did you get started in filmmaking? Did you know early on as a kid that this is what I wanted to do?
Yeah, not at all. I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I went to college, and even then filmmaking wasn't on my radar at all. I wanted to be a journalist. My goal was to write for the New York Times magazine or something, like news magazine stories. And now that I think about it, what I do now is really not that different than that. It's a
Right.
visual kind of version of that. But yeah, I studied journalism, and then after college, I still didn't really know. I went into a job that I was basically writing scripts for explainer videos on YouTube. It was through Discovery Channel. And I ended up moving to New York and working for this company Now This, which still exists, but it's on its last legs. And I was a copy editor there, and everyone around me was doing video. And I really had no idea how to use the tools at all. I didn't know how to use a camera, I didn't know how to edit. And I was pretty bored just being a copy editor there. And so I just taught myself how to edit and I taught myself how to use a camera just on the job there. And I just remember the first time I edited a video, you get into that flow state. I'd never really felt that before with writing. Writing always felt like a struggle, and when I edited a video, I forgot 5 hours would go by and I didn't even notice the time, and I just really fell in love with the visual medium. And I stayed at Now This for more than 4 years, which was great because it gave me the space to learn those things and make mistakes and make a salary that whole time. I
Right.
think if I was freelance, it would have been much harder. And yeah, and then I left in 2021 and I've been freelance since then and which has been a mix of commercial work. I'm still in the news world and I also do my own films like Georgie.
So you would say that it would be really hard for somebody to start off their career just being, "I'm gonna freelance." Like,
Yeah, I
that's
think it would
probably
be
not a sustainable way to go about it.
I think it would be really hard. Yeah. I mean, I think maybe in the narrative space, I know there's a path of you come out of film school, you become an assistant to, let's say, more established filmmaker, you are a PA on sets. I think that is a totally viable way to rise up in that world. But for me, I just really want to make work and learn as I do that. And that's really hard to do in a freelance space. And I think when someone's hiring you for a one-off job, their expectations are really high and you have to deliver on that, otherwise you're not gonna get more work, and
Right.
not that you don't have to deliver in your job if you're paid a salary, but I think it's just a little bit
Sure.
more flexibility to try
Right.
things and figure out what you are good at and what you like.
And there's a million competitors out there now, right? To be chosen for any sort of brand opportunity or company, you have to really be specialized and they know they can trust you. So you
Yeah.
have done branded content. I think that gets to your pitches are extraordinarily solid. Is that something you'd credit to that experience? Is beyond the filmmaking is just being able to sell your work has been an integral part of your success?
I definitely think that that comes from journalism. You're
Yeah.
constantly pitching
Right.
ideas, and I definitely did that at Now This all the time. I would always be pitching, and then that continued outside of when I went into freelance work, and I think those skills really transferred. And so, yeah, you just do it over and over again, and then you learn how to sell your ideas, which I can't say I'm a master at now, but I've definitely gotten better at it from just repetition.
And do you see yourself ever doing narrative work?
I don't think so. I do feel there is a common path of people who start out in documentary and then go to narrative work. And I understand that because I think once you make more and more films, you want to control more and more aspects of the film. And then
Right.
in documentary, of course, you have to let go of a lot of control because you're working with real people and so I understand that can be frustrating, but I'm just obsessed with nonfiction in general. I think real stories can be a lot more compelling than narrative. And although I do love narrative films as well, but yeah, I'm pretty set on documentary.
Which brings us to Georgie, which is just amazing, and I think it's the best compliment you can give a short film is that it stays with you for days, weeks after you watch it. So, can you tell people what they should expect to see when they watch Georgie?
Yeah, Georgie is a melancholic but humorous profile of an older man who has had a very hard life and now is living with his decisions.
What an answer. And so what has stuck with me is the loneliness. The shots it starts off depicting him saying that he's lonely, and then throughout the film, you make conscious decisions to highlight that, whether he's speaking in front of doesn't look like anyone or just long shots. I don't think the narrator is ever a part of it. It almost feels like he's talking to himself. at all times throughout the film. How did you come upon that as a theme? Was it something that you knew it doesn't feel like you knew that going in. It had to have been being around him where that became the dominant theme of what you saw.
Yeah, I came to it a couple of ways. I knew George for a couple years before we even started filming, and I just thought he was a really interesting person, but I didn't really know what to do with his story. And I did something I've never done before with any kind of project, and I highly recommend it. I did a test interview, and it wasn't over the phone. It was on camera. We sat down and we had an on camera conversation where I'm probably not gonna use this. I just filmed it myself. I didn't use a camera person, and I went home and listened to the transcripts, and he said something about being in prison and how it's affected his ability to be vulnerable and to get close to women specifically in a romantic way, but in general, just have close relationships with people. And how he's now, because of everything he's gone through, he's very closed off. And when I heard that, I was, oh, that's a really great way to anchor this film and this character and not just have it be this, oh, here's this quirky guy who has this mafia background. And
Right.
I wanted something a little bit deeper than that, and then I knew this is a film, and then I had some scenes planned with him, but of course you can in a documentary, you can plan all you want and you should plan, but of course your plans go out the window at some
Life.
point and you have to just film what you have, and I think the film ended up better that way because a lot of those ideas came from him and that ended up actually being great.
The other thing that goes on in a lot of documentaries, most people won't let themselves look bad on a
Mhm.
documentary. Nobody's gonna sign up and be, "Hey, Jenny, please showcase my life and make me look like a terrible person."
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen, but you also don't want it to be where it shows this was clearly just there for this person's marketing. So how did you handle that discussion with the subject? Did that come up of, "Okay, this is how the lens that I'm gonna be using to highlight your life?" Was it ever that specific? Or was it just generalities of this is the direction I'm going? And then when he saw it, what were his initial thoughts, and did it match up with what you were expecting him to think of the film?
Yeah, I think George is a very unique person and definitely he's one of the easiest subjects I've ever worked with. He loves being on camera, he loves the attention, he loves
Yeah,
being the subject of a documentary. And yeah, we had conversations about what we would film and things I wanted to focus on, but he really didn't ask that many questions. He just loved telling a story. And I was a little bit nervous to send him the film because that's I'm nervous to send
absolutely.
anyone a film about
Right.
themselves. And he loved it. He
Yeah.
responded, he said, "Great job." He came to one of the screenings in New York. He brought some of his mob friends from Staten Island, which was really interesting. And he was in the Q&A and he talked about how important it is to tell the truth in documentaries. And so it seems like he really feels this is an accurate portrayal of him and his life. And so I'm really happy about that. But I think in general, making subjects comfortable with this process is literally the hardest part of making a
Right.
documentary. There is nothing harder. And one thing I've found to be helpful is making people feel they have control over their own story, at least in even just a small way. I think that's just a human thing. People don't like to feel out of control. And
Right.
so one thing I've done is I'm working on something else right now that's a little bit more sensitive. And I've told the subject, if you say something in an interview or if we film you having a conversation with someone and you're, oh, I don't want that included, tell me and I won't include it. You have my word, you have veto power. I would never want a situation where someone says something on camera, they immediately regret it, and
Right.
I want people to feel in control in that way, and they should
Right.
be. And turning off the camera when people don't wanna be filmed. Just simple things that make people feel every day they're opting into this, and this is something that we're doing together, I think makes people feel a lot more comfortable with the process.
But isn't that the challenge though of getting, because then you have the idea of what attracts attention in documentaries, and it is the gotcha moments of, "I got this person to say this on camera," and if they did have that director had the same approach you did, they never would have seen that. So, isn't that the challenge of what is now selling in documentary are the gotcha moments where the documentary filmmaker breaks trust? I have to imagine they break trust in some way to be able to do it.
I think it just depends on who the subject is. If you're filming someone who For some reason, the first person that came to my mind is Billy McFarland,
Right.
the guy from the Fyre Fest fraud. He's the villain of the documentary, and you want those gotcha moments because the audience is not on his side. But I think what's more normal people, if you're just doing a really honest portrait of someone,
Yeah.
I don't think you want gotcha moments. I think for an example from Georgie is he has a tendency to stretch the truth. And I think that's a really funny part of his character. I don't think it's a bad thing that I'm trying to expose. I just think it's funny and it's part of his charm, and that's why I included there's a scene of him lying to the camera about owning a vintage car, and we show him lying about it. And it's a way to nod to the audience. This is a slightly unreliable narrator of his own story, and take that with a grain of salt. And I don't see it as a gotcha moment. I just see it as here's another data point about this person. And so yeah, I guess my answer to that is I think gotcha moments are fine if your characters it's very clear that they're a villain, but if they're a normal person, I actually don't really feel like it adds to the film.
I love that answer, Jenny. So you've taken Georgie to a variety of different festivals. You mentioned Palm Springs. It was at Doc NYC. It was on Rooftop, probably a few others that I'm missing. What has been that experience? Has it been what you expected? Unexpected in some ways? Would you do it again if you had another short doc coming out?
Yeah, it's been really fun. I met a lot of great people. I I don't know, I'm not really sure what the point of festivals is beyond showing your work in front of an audience and getting that feedback, but that
Right.
means a lot. That I
Yeah.
think that it helps you improve your work, and it's also a great way to make connections in the industry and find people who you might collaborate with in the future. But it's definitely not gonna I don't think it's gonna find you jobs or anything like that. It's just more of just a fun way to show your work, and I think you can creatively grow from it. But yeah, I will say the festival run has been really fun, and it's been better than I expected. I wasn't sure what to expect, and so I'm pleasantly surprised.
Interesting answer. So you wouldn't go broke on Film Freeway just signing up for all the laurels you can get. So that's the challenge, right? Is it, let's say you're a new filmmaker, you film a documentary, a short film, narrative, whatever it is, and then you go on Film Freeway and you get 30% off this, whatever, and you just send because you want the laurels or whatever. And you hope at the end you'll find distribution or something monetary out of it because you got to pay the bills. And so what would you recommend to that person about going on and pitching their film? It sounds like what you're saying is it's a nice to have if you can afford it, if you can make it into certain festivals, but you wouldn't mortgage your house to go on a film festival circuit
No,
with your film.
definitely don't mortgage your house. Yeah, it can add up and it can get really expensive, and
Right.
I think you have to think about what laurels I think having a film, thumbnail or poster with a million laurels that of festivals someone's never heard of, I feel that hurts your film more than it helps your film. I think you have to be strategic about where you're submitting, and I don't think the more laurels, the better. I think it's the quality and also submit to the festivals that make sense for your film. For
Right.
example, I didn't submit to Mountain Film, even though it's a mid-tier festival that was around the same, I guess, quality of other festivals that I was getting into, because I looked at their programming and most of the docs had to do with nature. And I know that they program more than that, but I just felt the vibe. I didn't see anything that was similar to the vibe of Georgie, and I was okay. I have to be realistic about what are my chances? I'm spending $45. Well, what are the chances of getting in? I didn't submit to Venice. I didn't submit to Berlin because if you look, they let in 0.5% of films. That's
Right.
throwing away at $50. I'd rather spend that $50 submitting to a couple of mid-tier festivals that I'm more likely to get into. Um, but yeah, I guess that was just and also submitting early is really helpful. I think if I were to do another festival run, now I've met a bunch of programmers. So of course the first thing I
Yeah.
would do on my next run is email those programmers who I've met now. But yeah, don't go crazy on Film Freeway. Have a strategy, look at where you're applying, apply early, and you can easily waste thousands of dollars doing that.
1,000%. I'm dying to have somebody from Film Freeway on the podcast because I think it's so important. People are spending so much money, and then you have alternatively, you have festivals reaching out with just this obvious revenue generation. They're not even
Oh
maybe
yeah, those are
watching the film. They just want
scams.
you to press submit. and give you $50 or whatever. And if you don't know any better, you can think, oh, it sounds pretty cool. They may have had films you've heard of show up at their festival. And then you think, how many people are falling for that and not getting
Yeah.
anything out of it except $50 less? And if you're already struggling with how hard it is to make money now, then it's a real loss for those people.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you start getting into festivals, you'll get a bunch of emails from random festivals you've never heard of being apply and here's a 50% off coupon. If you ever get those are a scam.
Yeah,
If they've seen your film, if
1000%.
they've heard about your film, they will give you a waiver to submit
Right.
for free and you should do that. But don't give them any money for it because yeah, those are definitely a scam.
Exactly. So leads me to my next question. You talked about it a little bit in the beginning, maybe jumping into freelance without experience may not be the right move. But if you're just starting off in documentary, what would you recommend? Would you tell people start your own YouTube channel, maybe find a niche, whatever it is, and exploit it, whether it's nature documentaries, whether it's going to combat zones or whatever it is, find that niche and exploit it? What kind of advice would you give somebody just starting out?
Definitely don't go to a combat zone. I think shorts are a really great way to hone your craft and also show your work. One of the reasons I made Georgie is because I was looking at all of the work that I had done, which a lot of the work that I've done is for other places, whether it's for a news channel or for a branded commercial client or something. And I really haven't made many things that I'm proud of, where this is my sensibility, this is my point of view, these are the things that I want to make. And I just wanted a work sample that really showed that. And I think that my advice for people starting out would be figure out something where the scope is literally so small, but you can show what you can do and learn from the process of just doing things. Find something where you can film in the city that you live in with just a character who you think is interesting. And it really doesn't need, especially with shorts, you can just find an interesting person and and the story doesn't have to be something extraordinary. And yeah, I think just keeping the scope really small. I know people who are starting out who are trying to make a feature as their first thing. And I think that is really tough.
I can't wait to see what's next. So maybe you can't talk about it, but is there anything that you can share about projects that you're working on next, Jenny?
Yeah. Yeah. As I mentioned, I'm working on another short right now that I'm actually starting to film next week. So hopefully that will be done at some point next year. It's a little bit of a darker topic, but I'm trying to find moments of levity in it. And then I'm in the early stages of a feature. I'm pitching a feature, trying to get funding for it, trying to get off the ground. So yeah, and then just trying to make a living in the meantime.
You're good at pitching, Jenny, so I fully expect that to be successful. Indie Film Podcast, love hyping other people's projects. Is there a film either you've seen at the festivals or a filmmaker that you wish more people knew about?
Yeah, yes. I guess in terms of I'm thinking just documentary here, it's funny to answer this question with this person because she's probably too well known to say she's indie, but Lauren Greenfeld is one of my favorite directors. She made The Queen of Versailles. She made this documentary called Thin, which is on HBO. It came out 20 years ago. I would just encourage anyone to check out her work. And it is very indie. Oftentimes she's filming herself. It seems a low budget project, but she does a lot of work around class and wealth and I just think her films are incredible. And then in terms of shorts, Omar Sami is doing great work. He made a short years ago called Sam and the Plant Next Door that I thought was incredible. And I've just been following his work since. In fact, I just saw one of his shorts at Palm Springs. He's in the UK and often works for The Guardian. And yeah, I just think he does great work.
It's funny, Jenny. I don't know if you listened to my episode with Daniel Ambroso, but that was exactly who he recommended
Oh,
as
really?
well. Yeah, no, he was just like, if he's gonna win an Oscar someday, he's that good. So
Definitely work. Yeah.
two recommendations for Omar. That's fantastic. Jenny
Yeah.
Butler, the film is Georgie. Do you have an idea of when you're gonna have it available on Vimeo? Do you have an idea that it's gonna be a short of the week somewhere? What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
when people can watch Georgie?
Yes, Short of the Week rejected me, but
Sucks.
it will be on Vimeo staff picks this summer at some point. So yeah, look out for it on Vimeo.
Do they watch it? That's the thing that I don't know about all these things is that you think about, like you said, Venice, Berlin, who get tens of thousands of films, and you have to have only one person watching the all one. Like, each film only has one person watching it,
Yeah,
right? It's not like
exactly.
they go through 2 or 3 people and have this cross-reference system where they're all
Oh,
dedicated.
no, yeah,
You
yeah,
get one, and maybe that guy has it on an alternate screen and is drinking his coffee or had a
yeah.
bad day or whatever, right? This could be all the reasons why things don't get selected from when you have such a large pool.
100%, and there's so many shorts, and I get it. You can't have multiple people watching something. I was just talking to the head programmer at Palm Springs this weekend, and he was, "Yeah, it was my goal this year to watch every single submission." There's over 6,000 submissions. How
No
many
way.
shorts could you watch in a that's insane. He was, "Yeah, great things slip by, and I wanna make
Yeah.
sure that I'm watching everything." So I can't imagine being a programmer, it sounds really difficult, so I get why they only have one person watching it. But anyway, it will be on Vimeo Staff Picks this summer, so just
I'll make
happy
sure to
about that.
highlight it when it is. That's a fantastic honor. It's a fantastic film. You're a fantastic conversationalist, Jenny. This has been great. Appreciate you coming on the podcast. If you ever revive your podcast, I'd love to highlight it. Do you miss
My podcast
podcasts?
actually still exists, I just don't host it anymore. So it's called
Okay,
Rough Cut Video Consortium. It's a video consortium podcast, it's great. Yeah, I'm no longer the host, but they often put out episodes, and it's great. It's called
awesome.
Rough Cut.
I'll make sure to link it. Jenny Butler, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Ben.